The Britain we know used to feed itself far better than it does now. Today, we produce only around 60% of the food we eat. At the same time, the countryside is being covered in solar panels and temporary accommodation, while the food that fills the shelf is increasingly ultra-processed, engineered for shelf life and profit rather than nutrition. The result is a country that is less independent, less healthy, and exposed to external shock. This is not just accidental. It is a product of policy choices and a particular form of industrial capitalism that prioritises scale and short-term returns over natural resilience and public health. I just want people to know that I'm not making a stance or trying to make a Bolshevik rant against private enterprise. It is a critique of the current system that has concentrated food production into industrial models, flooded the market with ultra-processed products, and treated farmland as a convenient site for energy projects and housing of last resort. The same mindset treats nuclear power as politically difficult while pushing intermittent renewables that require vast land and critical minerals. The outcome is Britain that imports more of its calories, watches chronic diseases rise, and remains dependent on fragile global supply chains for both food and the materials needed for energy transition. There is a better way, and it starts with taking food production and distribution back into our own hands at the local level. So a lot of people would ask why our food is so completely ultra processed and terrible with the food trap, and also to do with the lack of food independence. The UK's food production to supply ratio sits at roughly 60% for all food and around 72 to 77% for the types of food we can actually grow here. That is a long way from genuine self-sufficiency. Decades of policy have favoured cheap imports, large-scale industrial farming, and supermarket models that demand uniformity, long shelf life, and low prices above almost everything else. The same exact system has a massive explosion of ultra-processed food. These products are not a result of some abstract capitalism in the Marxist sense. They are the logical outcome of a regulatory and commercial environment that rewards calorie density, addictive formulations, and long distribution chains. The companies that dominate this space make money when people buy more, not when people are healthier. The public health consequences are visible: rising obesity rates, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and strong associations between high ultra-processed food intake and certain cancers and cardiovascular diseases. A country that cannot feed itself and simultaneously poisons its own population with industrial food is not resilient. Real food security requires production farmland kept in use for farming, shorter supply chains, and a food economy that does not treat human health as an externality. Regaining independence means deliberately shifting spending and demand towards our own farm. That means buying direct from local producers whenever possible. Farm shops, box schemes, farmers markets, and community-supported agriculture. It means building local networks of growers, butchers, bakers, and consumers who prioritise British produce over import and ultra-processed alternatives. Every pound spent with a local farm is a pound that strengthens national capacity instead of reinforcing dependence on global food supply chains. These networks do not require waiting for government permission. They can be built from the ground up by the people who simply choose to buy different and connect with the producers around them. While food production capacity is under pressure, large areas of countryside and agricultural land are being converted to ground-mounted solar farms and used for temporary accommodation. This is presented as progressive and sustainable. In reality, it is a poor use of finite productive land. Solar powers belong on rooftops, industrial buildings, and above car parks where they can generate power without removing fields from food production. They can be used to actually power even electric cars. Covering farmland with panels or converting rural sites into housing of last resort reduces the country's ability to feed itself and changes the character of the countryside permanently. The claim that it is the only way to achieve energy security ignores denser, more reliable alternatives. Nuclear power, built properly with robust concrete foundations and modern containment, deliver large amounts of reliable electricity from tiny land footprint. It is not intermittent. It does not require covering fields. When projects are executed with proper engineering standards, long-term costs are competitive and the energy density is unmatched by weather-dependent sources. Choosing to industrialise the countryside with lower intensity renewables while neglecting nuclear option is a political choice, not a technical necessity. Maybe someone like Nima Parvini of Academic Agent can actually understand this and why Blamus Britannica made way better points than he did, instead of just having hippy-whippy or types of having renewables like with solar panels and also to do with wind turbines that also kill local wildlife. So the question is, what would we actually be able to replace our power with? Or something that's way better and also to do with not relying on lithium-ion batteries, which only last around 10 years. There is actually one solution, which is to do with sodium. Even with the renewable path being pushed requires massive energy storage. The dominant technology has been lithium-ion batteries. Lithium brings its own problems: concentrated supply chains, environmental damage from mining, like with lithium mines in Africa, prices that are volatile, fire risk, and poor performance in cold weather. A recent analysis by Dr. Ben Miles, which I watched his video on, examines sodium-ion batteries that are now entering mass production for grid storage. Sodium is abundant. It can be extracted from salt and soda ash. These batteries retain over 90% of capacity minus 20 degrees, handle high temperatures with far less thermal runaway risk, and projected to last significantly longer in stationary applications. Modelling based on real development point towards multi-decade lifespans under typical grid cycling. They use iron, phosphate, and hard carbon from biomass rather than scarce lithium. Sodium-ion is not completely replacement for lithium in weight-sensitive uses such as electrical vehicles, where energy density still matters. For grid storage, however, shifting solar power to even demanding is well suited. It reduces dependence on lithium supply chains and avoids some of the worst environmental and geopolitical costs. Pairing nuclear baseload with sodium-based storage and genuine rooftop and car park solar is more coherent route to energy security than covering productive farmland while remaining hooked on critical minerals. A nation that cannot feed itself, that makes its population metabolically ill with industrial food, and that treats its countryside as a dumping ground for low-density energy projects and emergency housing, is choosing fragility. None of this is inevitable. The first and most practical step is rebuilding local farm food networks. Buy from British farms, support the producers who still work on the land, and create demand that makes independent farming viable again. The alternative is very, very straightforward. Protect farmland for food, put solar where it does not destroy productive land, build nuclear properly, adopt storage technologies that do not recreate new forms of resource dependency, and deliberately shift everyday spending toward local and natural producers. That is the real true resilience. It starts with what you put in your shopping basket and who you choose to buy from. So anyway guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video about me talking about the sustainable side of politics. And obviously people would wonder why this is like a reasonable argument, and the reason why is because a lot of the time that people on politics on the right kind of focus on anti-immigration views, which you can have that and you can have this in a party, but the problem is if your views are just that and nothing else, it's just kind of a poor way to argue. Take, for example, Steve Laws. Now, obviously, a lot of people give him shit online, but I think a really good proper criticism would be actually providing proper infrastructure. When someone asks him a question about, what you would do with being able to manage the energy, he probably really wouldn't give a good answer. The same with something like to do with immigration. And because of this, when people focus on this too much, is that the reason why it goes in tangent. Obviously, got millions of people coming here en masse, because even if we do all of this and we do economic workarounds and tinkering, like something like with reform, or even the Green Party, where they're not even focused on immigration, one focused on the economic and energy side, where they literally want to ban nuclear energy, which is completely and utterly retarded. And because of this, you see that this issue in politics when it comes down to actually writing a proper energy policy. And like I talked about in the last video, where a lot of political parties don't actually enact a lot of the policy, a lot of the time they will just basically just completely and utterly forget. Now, obviously, someone like Wistama, say what about him, but he actually did go and check a lot of these nuclear sites that are being built in the UK. And obviously, we haven't built a massive nuclear power energy grid yet, but I just think something like along the line, when we actually do have to focus on energy and storage, even if we, let's say, got mass deportations or remigration, we would still have to focus on our infrastructure and being able to get back our independence, especially because the British Empire is now long gone. There isn't enough resources around you to actually be able to focus on being independent, especially because the UK rely on a lot of gas and oil for the energy and to do with heating. And because when you focus on this type of policy and as well in this type of politics, it is really important to actually, one, making sure this is actually sustainable and not paving over farmlands, to be able to create energy farms, that can actually be useful, because a lot of the time these farmers actually sell the land because they're offered like millions of pounds for the land. And obviously housing is an issue, but like I said, if we did actually get our way, it would be a lot better to actually focus on not trying to pave the countryside, even just for profit, or even be greedy. And obviously, like I said, with to do with the proper criticisms of capitalism instead of the financial masturbation, for example, like me and Fjodor have talked about, where to do with, all these people just generate a bunch of money, but they just don't do anything with it. But yeah, anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video about me talking about the sustainable side of this, and also to do with food production, because obviously I'm checking my health now. I forgot to mention this, where I'm doing blood tests to make sure that I'm actually properly healthy, I'm actually fertile, because obviously we're surrounded by a lot. Now obviously I have a good diet and health, and I focus on exercise, but a lot of the majority of people don't actually do this, not encouraged. And obviously the cattle, goy cattle, but eventually maybe we'll have like proper programs in maybe like schools to actually do proper PE and make sure a lot of these kids aren't just going to McDonald's. In fact, we could probably ban like restaurant chains like KFC and McDonald's, in my opinion. Obviously people would worry about more profits, but it's better to have like local food that's made for local people, like I said, with to do with farming, with networking, try to buy off local farms. Now obviously a lot of people don't have that option, probably a lot of people don't live near farms. I know I don't live farms, but hopefully I am actually going to talk about that with Reese Talking, who I've actually been speaking to, and maybe in the future we are actually going to do a collab this week, so hopefully you guys can actually catch that when we actually do talk about this side of politics, and also to do with not eating goy slop, and also maybe some other angles that me and Reese could talk about. And as well, if you want to go down, link in the description, we'll link some other channels and Discord as well.